Welcome back, warrior. Okay, we are reading Genesis chapter 41 today. And if you didn't know how to take your walking to the next level, you can be forced to take it to the next level by still using the weights. Okay, that's one step. But then the other step would be by inclining it to 8. So we have options. Sometimes you're forced to up-level your routines based on what's happening with the things. Okay. The preface for chapter 41, or the chapter summary, is Pharaoh dreams of the cattle and the ears of grain. Joseph interprets the dreams as 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. He proposes a grain storage program. Pharaoh makes him ruler of all Egypt. Joseph marries Asenath. He gathers grain as the sand upon the seashore. Asenath bears Manasseh and Ephraim. Joseph sells grain to Egyptians and others during the famine. Okay, by the way, one of my best friends is Egyptian, and just love her to death. So Egyptians are amazing people. I love them. I am basing all of my knowledge off of one person who is so good. So anyways, that's my experience with Egyptians. And what's kind of awesome is how she would go to Egypt and visit and would bring me little things. And she'd bring me like a pyramid, and she brought me back like one of the cats, or I don't remember what they're called. You would think that I would know these things, but because we've been friends for so long. But alas, I am very short-minded. Anyway, so she's brought me back some things, and I love it because when I think of those little trinkets, the little tchotchkes or the travel things, they remind me of this story of Joseph of Egypt. And so I really love this whole story. And it shows that the Lord does not forget us, even though we might think and we might feel like he's forgotten us. So it's just a good reminder. And I love that Joseph married an Egyptian. That is so cool. So here we go. Verse 1. And it came to pass at the end of the 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. Hold on, wait. I did need to read this part here. It says, and it had been 2 years since the butler was freed, but how many years Joseph had actually been in prison is not known. Some Jewish teaching suggests that he was in prison for 12 years. And the Old Testament Institute manual says this, okay? So before we keep reading. And make sure you get like highlighters and pens and things, because it is so fun. Okay, Joseph was in prison for 2 years after he interpreted the dreams of the chief butler and baker. He was sold into slavery when he was about 17. Who's good at math, okay? And he was 30 years of age when he became vice regent to the Pharaoh. Altogether, he served 13 years with Potiphar and in prison. The record does not tell how long he served Potiphar before his imprisonment, but that he worked his way up to be the overseer of the prison implies some period of time before the butler and baker joined him. So it is likely that Joseph was in prison at least 3 years and possibly much longer. So, end quote, Old Testament Student Manual. So let's think about what that might have been like for Joseph, right? To help us learn even more about his character. His commitment to the Lord was always unwavering, and no matter the unfairness, no matter the consequences, and no matter the length of time. So anyways, here we go. Verse 2. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine and fat-fleshed, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke, and he slept and dreamed the second time. And behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. Upon one stalk, rank and good. And he slept, and behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears. And Pharaoh woke, and behold, it was a dream. Okay, so verse 8, and it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Okay, so Pharaoh had a dream, and the Jewish scholar Josephus said God freed Joseph from his confinement. God contrived this method of deliverance for him. Isn't that interesting that the Lord is the one who initiated this? Because it couldn't have been anything else or anyone else, right? The Lord is the one who was giving Pharaoh this dream. And so it's like, who initiated the dream first to Joseph back in the day before he got put in the pit? That was also the Lord, right? And so, I just got goosebumps. And sometimes there's things that people do, all the time. There's things that people do that are out of our own volition and our own agency, right? And then things get sparked to do from there because certain people do certain things, and then then you choose based on what that happened. And so it's kind of like a domino effect of if they choose to do this, then we've chosen to do this. It's like boundaries, right? If they do this, we do that. Anyway, and so, but if we think about the dream, only the Lord could have made him dream that dream. And that was when he was young. And now the Lord is having Pharaoh dream a dream, right? And so these are both, and then the butler and the baker, right? But these are both instances where there's no doubt that it was the Lord that was in charge. And I love that because it leaves us without a doubt. It's just for sure the Lord did that, right? So anyway, I love that. Also, he's probably why didn't he do this sooner? At least that's what I'm thinking. Probably Joseph was not like that, but anyway. So then Pharaoh had 2 dreams, and like the butler and baker, the dreams pressed upon his mind. In the first dream, were 7 healthy cows that came up out of the river, probably the Nile River, and they were feeding in the meadow. Then 7 unhealthy cows also came out of the river and ate up the 7 healthy cows. At this point, Pharaoh awoke. And then Pharaoh slept again and had another similar dream of the corn, 7 good ears of corn. Some suggest it could have been read as wheat, right? Growing upon one stalk, which would have highlighted the fruitfulness of that stalk and Egypt's ability to produce food, for Egypt was green and fertile. But then seven thin ears of corn that were blasted with the east wind sprung up after them, and they devoured the 7 good ears of corn. So this dream deeply troubled Pharaoh. Why? Because I feel like those would be totally applicable to his people, right? So he sat upon the throne, and whom all of Egypt looked up to. But we also remember that he would kill peeps if you were not doing what Pharaoh needed you to do, right? We know because the baker got hung, right? Who knows what it was that he did? I don't know. But then the butler didn't get hung, right? So we know that if you don't do right by Pharaoh, he can kill you. So So what could this mean, right? Because everyone looked up to him, but also feared him, probably. So he called all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men thereof, and Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. So these wise men were trained and would have given titles and honors, but none of them, okay, and I would add like witches, palm readers, tarot card readers, all the things, right? Like everybody was called in to help with Pharaoh's dream. But none of them could interpret this dream, because the way that these people interpret things is not the way of God, and it is not a true way, right? It's all just made up and fake, like for these people, to like, because that's what magicians are. It's just like all tricks and smoke and mirrors, right? And then like witchcraft and like fortune tellers and just like all these things are just all the things that are fake, that are not of God, they're not true. And as much as we'd like to think they are because they gave us our horoscope and it totally feels like us, it is not the thing, okay? But the Lord is the one who provides truth and the real stuff, right? And so I love that not one of these people, either because they were too scared because they would be found out that they wouldn't be able to do it, or that the answer that they gave was not sufficient for Pharaoh, that none of them could do it, right? Like, those are the two options, because I do feel like there were some people who could probably have tried, but maybe would have died because they gave bad or false information, right? So, but then I do believe that there were some that maybe tried, and Pharaoh was like, nah, that's not it, right? But maybe they didn't kill him. So anyway, but none of them could interpret his dream, but there was a Hebrew boy sitting in the king's prison who actually could, right? And so this is awesome. Okay, then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. Pharaoh was wroth with his servant, and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he, we dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, an Hebrew servant, to the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me he restored unto mine office, and him he hanged. And Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and he brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and he shaved himself and changed his raiment and came in unto Pharaoh. Okay, so obviously Joseph was not looking amazing, being that he spent so many years in prison, looking real scruffy. Makes sense. Something else I'm noticing is that the chief butler, I wonder if he was gonna suggest, like, here's the thing for me, like, I really do think people are scared of Pharaoh, and I think that tracks with like movies and things, because he kills people, right? And so I wonder if the baker or if the butler is like, oh, you know what? There's a guy in the prison who we don't care if he dies or not because he's a prisoner, but he did actually interpret my dream correctly, right? And so we should bring him, right? Because everyone was getting desperate, and if Pharaoh gets desperate, he's not going to be in a good mood, blah blah blah. And we all know people like that who, if they don't get what they want, they start doing bad things. And sadly, that's I'm not saying that that's right. I'm just saying this is probably like why or how the chief butler decided to share, because he didn't care about, it's not like he cared about Joseph, right? Like, at least, like, I think, okay, because this is speculation, I think he didn't necessarily care about Joseph. He just didn't want to die. And I think that it was something that, he maybe was friends with other people who were part of the king's court who he asked to interpret dreams, and he didn't want them to die. And so, because rich people always trying to stick together. And so he was probably like, yeah, let's tell him about this guy. He did interpret my dream correctly, but if he dies, then it doesn't matter, right? Like, that's kind of how I think it must have went down. Now, that's just Linda's speculation. You can read for yourself and see if that's what you think might have happened. But based on that's how I think it kind of played out. And so then, of course, Pharaoh is like, oh yeah, bring that guy here. Like, for sure. Okay, so because why wouldn't he have brought him up sooner? Like, that's kind of what I was wondering. Why wouldn't have if the butler cared so much about Joseph, why didn't he tell him about him sooner? Okay, so that's why I think the way I think of it is how it must have played out. Okay, so one moment Joseph was sitting in prison, and the next he was brought hastily out of the dungeon, shaved, cleaned up, and dressed to stand before Pharaoh. Since Egyptians valued being clean and well-groomed, right? So this is great. Just like that, Joseph was walking the corridors of Pharaoh's palace. Try to imagine that moment in his life and the prayers he must have whispered along the way. Yet none of this caught God by surprise. Of course, because he totally planned it, right? Joseph had already experienced his own dreams, interpreted the dreams of others, served Pharaoh's officers, learned Egyptian customs, and most importantly, remained faithful to God. He was ready. Ooh. There's a saying that the Lord raises up people to be in your life. And I mean, I cannot tell you how many people in my life the Lord has raised up to help me at specific moments in time that I have needed them. And they needed to be ready to help because I needed that help. And I really hope that I'm like that to others. But I can remember so many people in my life specifically placed in the spaces that I needed them the most because I needed strength then. And so I 1,000% believe that the Lord raises up people and puts them in our path on purpose to bless our lives. And I really hope that I am like that, where I am able to be that person for somebody else because of the fact that I have been treated so kindly in that way, you know? Okay. Okay. So now we're on verse 15. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, right? Yeah. I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And don't you love that? He's just always giving credit back to God. Do we do that? Do we give credit back to God for everything we do? I know I forget. So it's so easy to forget, you know, in the moment when people are like, oh, you're amazing. In fact, I talked to somebody just the other day and I was like, oh, I don't know how you do it, you know? And I mean, I think I tell that to so many people, but like very few people are like, oh, I couldn't do it without God. You know what I mean? Very few people. Usually it's like, I mean, I'm pretty sure I've said the same thing, like, oh, thanks so much. That's so nice of you to say. Like, literally, I do nothing, right? Like, I totally play down what I do. But I should just be saying, oh, thanks, you know, it's all God. It's all God. And so, anyway, so I love that he is giving praise already. Before he even gave the answer, he's just like, oh, yeah, no worries. God will give you the answer, Pharaoh. And so verse 17, Pharaoh said unto Joseph, in my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of the river. He just has so much confidence. That's what I love about Joseph. He has so much confidence in the Lord. Like he's just like, oh, yeah. God will give you the answer. Well, of course, now he sees how God has just taken him out of the dungeon and is walking those halls. And it had to only be because of God, because it was a dream. And so he's like, this is the only, like I have literally been made for this moment. It's like what he was thinking, you know? And so he knew without a doubt. that God would provide the way for him to be the vessel so that Pharaoh could get his answer and to bless so many people's lives, Oh man, I tell you, I love this story so much for so many reasons. Hopefully this is not going to be like 3-hour scripture study. I mean, it would be awesome. But, sometimes I like to talk too much. Okay, so here we go. Verse 18. And behold, there came up out of the river. So we're going to read the story again. Okay. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very, very ill-favored and lean-fleshed, such as I never saw in all the land of Egypt for badness. And the lean and the ill-favored kine did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them. But they were still ill-favored, as at the beginning. So I awoke, and I saw in my dream, and beheld 7 ears came up in one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears withered, thin, and blasted with the east wind sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kine. First of all, also, let's give Joseph some props for staying focused. Oh man, I know, right? Long enough to hear 2 full dreams. I'm guessing it was a lot more detailed than this. This is just what was put in the scriptures, I would have been like, can you actually tell me? Can you actually say that one more time? Tell me again, what was it? Anyway, so Joseph, he was prepared, and he was like really excited and really, I'm guessing, maybe a little bit nervous, but not too much because he had so much courage in Christ, Okay. So the 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. Okay. Sorry, I thought I missed something. Verse 28, this is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And there shall arise after them 7 years of famine. And all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt. And the famine shall consume the land. Okay, so now, as a non-Egyptian, so hold on. So we're on verse 31, okay? So Joseph now stood before the great Pharaoh, a ruler seen not only as king, but as a god by the Egyptians, okay? As a non-Egyptian who had spent years in Pharaoh's prison, Joseph knew how dangerous this moment could be, yes? He had watched others lose their lives for offending the king. See, this is what I'm telling you. When Pharaoh said he had heard Joseph could interpret dreams, Joseph responded with remarkable humility and courage, declaring that he himself could not interpret dreams, but that God could, standing before the most powerful man in Egypt. Joseph openly testified of the true and living God, just as he had done with his brothers, in Potiphar's house, in prison, and now before Pharaoh, showing that no circumstance caused him to shrink from his faith. So much courage. And if you watch the movie Joseph, you can picture that guy. Such a nice boy, just such a wholesome kid. I don't know what he's like in real life at all, but like in the movie, they really portray him as being such a nice boy, And Pharaoh then shared his dreams, adding details that emphasized how severe and disturbing they were. Through the gift of God, he Through the gift God had given him, Joseph explained that the two dreams were one message from God. 7 years of abundance would be followed by 7 years of devastating famine, so severe that the years of plenty would be forgotten, and God would bring it to pass quickly. Joseph then boldly offered counsel, urging Pharaoh to appoint a wise leader to store 1/5 of the crops during the years of abundance, so Egypt would be prepared when the famine came. Now, this is some serious math. You got to do maths for that. How would he have known 1/5 would have been enough? Okay, so verse 31. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of the famine following, for it shall be very grievous. And for that dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now therefore, let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. I wonder why it wasn't like a different number. Anyway, I don't know how they got to the 5th part, but the Lord told them. That's what I can guess. Okay. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. Now remember, this is the second time an Israelite is in the city of Egypt. Remember Moses? Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think because of the way Moses had to leave, a lot of Egyptians don't really like that guy, that prophet. So it's like one of those things, you know. But everybody loved Joseph, right? Because he was helping Egypt. Honestly, like, where would Egypt be if it wasn't for Joseph, right? And that food so then verse 36, and that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. Okay, so God cares about Egypt and about Joseph, right? He cared so much about Egypt that he made Joseph go through all this. But God also cared so much about the Israelites that he made Joseph go through all this. And so sometimes, well, all the time, the Lord will consecrate our afflictions for our gain. And but we won't see it. Like poor Joseph was like so little. I say little, but he was probably like taller than me. And when he got sold into slavery in Egypt, or to the Ishmaelites, who were his family, practically his cousins or whatever. Anyway, it's wild. Okay, so verse 37. Okay. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such an one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, forasmuch as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house. Oh, nice. He's like noticing how awesome Joseph is, right? And paying attention to God, right? Because that's what he's saying. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. I don't know how long this process lasts or was, but if it seemed as immediate as it is to me, then it's like right there, like bam. One day he's in the prison. The same day he is now over all of Egypt. Like what the? That's amazing, right? Hashtag goals for the little guy, right? Okay, so, but who do we need to give props to? Is God. That's how we can make it. Okay. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. Like, this is the best moment ever. And like, I love how they did this in the movie too. It's like so good. I mean, honestly, go watch it. It's so cute. I mean, not cute, but like, you know what I'm saying? It's so good to see all this. So Pharaoh was pleased with both Joseph's interpretation of the dream and his suggestion on how to handle the coming crisis, and Pharaoh immediately accepted Joseph's solution. He recognized that Joseph, a Hebrew, that's what I meant. I guess, yeah, Hebrew, but like Israelite, right? So like, anyway, yes, because also Moses was Hebrew. Okay, anyway, that Joseph, a Hebrew, was the right man for the job. Why? Because he saw that no one in all of Egypt was as wise as Joseph. And remember that Joseph was a prisoner, and now suddenly he was being made a ruler with such authority that only Pharaoh himself was greater than Joseph. Like, but why? And why would Pharaoh do this? Notice what Pharaoh said in verse 38. Notice what he recognized in Joseph. He said, while Pharaoh was speaking with his servants, he said, can we find such a one as this is a man in whom the Spirit of God is? Right? Elder L. Tom Perry gave an entire talk based on this phrase. The talk is called Becoming Men in Whom the Spirit of God Is. I'm going to have to go listen to that one. In that talk, he shared the story and equated it to verse 38. Here's what he said. Elder L. Tom Perry. Okay, it's kind of long, but we're going to bear with us. Okay, my father had a unique experience when he was the age of a priest. There were no high schools where he lived, and he wanted an education. He received permission from his father to leave the farm and seek his education elsewhere, but he had to make it on his own. Arriving in Salt Lake City, he heard of an employment position being offered in the home of President Joseph F. Smith. He was hired to care for the prophet's 2 cows. Sister Smith instructed my father in his duties, explaining that the cows were aristocrats and you must treat them well. You are to keep them so clean and train them so well that if I should ever at any time conclude to move them into the parlor, they would be clean enough to enter. Before milking each morning and night, they were thoroughly washed and dried with hot water, soap, and towels prepared for that purpose. Okay, so let's just throw this out there. Probably 0 cows are treated this well in our day. And it's too bad she wasn't in charge of PETA, because I think all animals would be treated so much better if she would have been in charge, right? Okay, so anyway, let's keep reading. They were fed the best of hay and milked at exactly the same hour twice a day. All of us nursing mamas who've experienced all this nursing can attest to never milking at the same exact time every day. Although we wish that was it. I mean, at least I could never. It was always a shot in the dark. It felt like I wrote everything down. We had patterns, and then they would get messed up, right? Like, that's how it was. Because you got to do what the baby wants anyway. So let's keep going. I always felt like a cow whenever I nursed. For some reason, it was just like, well, I guess this is what cows do. Anyway, that's why I said that, but not trying to insult us. Anyway, the Smith family took this poor farm boy from Idaho into their home while he finished high school and attended the University of Utah. They included him in their family activities around the dinner table and at family prayer. My father shared with us his witness that the prophet Joseph F. Smith, was truly a man of God. When I kneeled with the prophet in family prayer and listened to his earnest supplications for the blessings of the Lord upon his family and their flocks and their herds, I realized that those same humiliating cows were the subject of his blessings. My feet were brought solidly to earth. My most great men I have known have been deflated by intimate contact. Not so with the prophet Joseph F. Smith. Every common, everyday act added inches to his greatness. To me, he was a prophet, even while washing his hands or untying his shoes. My father's description of the prophet Joseph F. Smith reminds me of the Pharaoh's statement about Joseph of Egypt. Can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? End quote. Love that. Elder L. Tom Perry, Becoming Men in Whom the Spirit of God Is. April 2002 General Conference. Okay. We're going to have to listen to that one. Okay. Let's see. Verse 45. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath Paneah. Zaphnath Paneah. Oh, yeah. I do remember that. I still don't know if I could say it, though. Zaphnath Paneah, and gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. Wow. And he got married. Who knows how long that took? And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. Don't you wish that's the kind of stuff we could have happened to us at 30 years old? And in the 7 plenteous years, the earth brought forth by handfuls. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years, which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities. The food of the field, which was round about every city, laid he up in the same. Okay, you have to watch the movie for this, because you wonder where all these things are going to be stored. And they have these giant, and I don't know if it's true, but they had these giant basins, or buildings. I don't know what to call it. Storage container units, who knows? And it's just so cool to see all the people going and dropping off all the things, right? Anyway, it's so cool. And then verse 49, and Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea, very much, until he left numbering, for it was without number. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, Potipharah, priest of On, bare unto him. Okay, and Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God said, He hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Oh, that is so cool, right? The names, I just love the meaning of those names. Okay, so Joseph marries and has a family. Joseph was now 30, making it 13 years since he had been sold into Egypt. 13 years of absolutely faithful dedication in all types of circumstances that he was in, and that would test even the strongest among us, And now he found himself given power, responsibility, even a family, just like all the things, all the blessings that we all want, right? We are introduced to Manasseh and Ephraim for the first time, whom many in the church are descendants of. Ephraim will receive the birthright, which according to President Joseph Fielding Smith, is the reason why many members of the church are descendants of Ephraim, he said. We know it to be the fact that the Lord called upon the descendants of Ephraim to commence his work in the earth in these last days. We know further that he has said that he set Ephraim according to the promises of his birthright at the head. End quote. President Joseph Fielding Smith, Doctrines of Salvation, Volume 2. Okay. And then I love this question. What do the names of Joseph's sons teach us about Joseph's perspectives on trials? Ooh, powerful, right? That his trials are summed up in those sweet little boys. I don't know. It's so cute. And then you get to see them running around in the movie. It's so cute. Okay, that's probably why it's cute. Or that's probably why I said it was cute. Okay, and then verse 53, the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land of Egypt were ended, and the 7 years of dearth began to come, according to, as Joseph had said, and the dearth was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread, because of Joseph, right? And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he saith to you, do. And the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses. Oh, a storehouse. Maybe that's what it was. And sold unto the Egyptians. And the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all countries came into Egypt to Joseph to buy corn, because that the famine was so sore in all the lands. And isn't that just like such a glorious story? Kate, famine in all the lands, Kate. And for 7 years, Joseph planned, organized, and led the gathering of the food into the storehouses. And then the 7 years of dearth began to come, and the storehouses were opened, and all countries came into Egypt to Joseph to buy corn, to buy all the things that they needed, right? Okay, so Orson Hyde said this: thus the country to which the chosen of God was banished was enabled to feed the starving millions that fled thither for 7 long years. And Joseph was prime minister to the crown and general superintendent of all the affairs of Egypt. He controlled all the food that had been laid up in store. The famine waxed strong in the land from which he was expelled, and they had nothing laid up in store, for they had no Joseph to warn them of the approaching distress. They had driven him away, and God greatly blessed the land to which he fled. End quote. Be nice to your little siblings. That's the moral of the story. Orson Hyde, Journal of Discourses, Volume 2. Yes, always be nice and kind and loving to all your siblings, okay? Because you never know when they're going to be needing to rescue you because you were a jerk, and then you have to go and help them. And then they have to go and help you, right? Be kind, be kind. Okay, yesterday I saw some TikToks or whatever social media video of things that your brother does to you as a female. It's like things that your brother does, and it's like all these things that are like the worst. Somebody's like, one of them was slapping the ponytail, and the other one, or like the bun, and then another one was stealing the noodles out of their mouth practically, and then another one was just like smacking the sister, and one of them was like rolling over the sister, dragging them on the floor. Anyway, you've probably seen the video, and it's like meant to be hilarious, but then there's a lot of comments in there that talk about how they wish that their brother was still alive so that they could, or their sister, so that they could either receive the harassment and teasing, or that they could give it, right? And it just kind of reminds me of like this story, like just love your siblings, it's all God gave you to be here on earth with. They're like your forever buddies. And you gotta do life with them so that later you can do the eternities with them. And, like when people say families are together forever, it's not supposed to be a threat. Okay, it's supposed to be a blessing. And anyway, if you make it a good, or if you treat your siblings right, it will be a blessing. And if you don't treat your siblings right, it's going to feel like a threat. Because who wants to be with a sibling who's attacking them all the time, right? But yeah, anyway, okay. So that is chapter 41. Isn't that amazing? Okay, and then look at that. We've already walked 2.25 miles. And it's no wonder my left leg is feeling it. Okay, so, hold on. Okay, this is our first read it, live it. We're going to do the read it, live it. Okay, one of them is, it is not in me, God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. So Joseph stood before a king, but made no claim to glory. He gave the credit before he gave the interpretation. Yes, we talked about that. That was awesome, right? Give God the glory first. Okay? Yes, that's the pattern. Okay. Then we have this one. For God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Okay, God didn't wait for Joseph to be rescued to bless him. He gave fruit in the middle of the pain. Find his sweetness. Okay, so those are the two. And we are now done. So until Genesis chapter 42, stay strong, warrior. Stay strong like Joseph. Okay, really quick, I wanted to make sure that we remember and think about our patriarchal blessings. And that is where we will be told into which family we have been adopted into, whether it is Joseph's son Ephraim, the oldest, or just kidding, Ephraim or Manasseh. I think Manasseh was actually the oldest and Ephraim was the youngest, but because Joseph received the double portion from his dad and all of the, how they do the whole inheritance thing, then he gave his 2 portions to his sons. And so then his sons were able to be adopted in as like the original tribes of Israel. So anyway, that could be really confusing, and it still is a little bit to me. But you can see in your patriarchal blessing which line you are adopted into. And okay, let's see if I can remember the words. It seems that Ephraim's job is to basically gather Israel. And then Manasseh's job is to help Ephraim to gather Israel. So like we're all gathering Israel here. It doesn't matter. But yeah, like now on the church's tools app, I think, or what is it? Is it LDS tools? No, tools is, it's just the scripture one. It's the scripture one. Anyway, you can see your patriarchal blessing. You can request it. And you can use it. I think patriarchal blessings are amazing. I have some of my affirmations that I have that I recite from they started from my patriarchal blessing and I turned them into affirmations so to help remind me who I am. And it provides such amazing strength from my Heavenly Father and just like really awesome. Anyway, wanted to throw that in there. Also, there's a really good quote from President Monson about patriarchal blessings. Let me get that. Okay, so here it is. It says, the same Lord who provided Eliahonah to Lehi provides for you and for me today a rare and valuable gift to give direction to our lives, to mark the hazards of our safety, and to chart a way, even a safe passage, not to the promised land, but to our heavenly home. The gift to which I refer is known as your patriarchal blessing. Every worthy member of the church is entitled to receive such a precious and priceless personal treasure. President Thomas S. Monson. Isn't that so good? Okay, now there's another part that he says. He says, your blessing is not meant to be folded neatly and tucked away. It is not to be framed or published. Rather, it is to be read. It is to be loved. It is to be followed. Read it frequently, study it carefully, be guided by its cautions, live to merit its promises. End quote. President Thomas S. Monson. Okay, so anyway, I love patriarchal blessings, and I love how we can be linked to Joseph's story and how Joseph's story can be our story. And anyway, it's so powerful. And I believe that in our patriarchal blessings, we can come from any Israelite tribe, not just Ephraim and Manasseh. But anyway, I'm not going to tell you which one mine is in case there's haters out there. But anyways, treasure that patriarchal blessing and find it in the app. Okay, that's it. Stay strong. Bye.